Oh, you think the human mind is
Agent
safe?
Forsythe? How are you feeling?
Lucky.
Like many of the highest regarded family-friendly entertainment, Psychonauts 2 shines for the way it can condense mature themes and content into a message that is appropriate and digestible for all ages. The team at Doublefine have crafted a multi-layered, psychedelic exploration into psychology that should be considered one of the best in visual storytelling. One might say they really doubled down on this sequel.
I will take out your intestines, fry them into hash browns, and sew them back into your body before you ever get the chance to try that again.
Every level has been carefully designed to express the many complexities of a character's mind, while also remaining comfortably within the boundaries of a silly 1950s espionage comic book thriller. I mean, using a door to enter someone's mind might be banana land amounts of believability, but the disorders that this game highlights are very real and just as complicated as the levels that inspire them. It's in this realm that the team explored some heavy concepts through the lens of comedy and empathy in their first outing, Psychonauts, all the way back in 2002.
Campfire at Whispering Rock. I haven't been here for days.
Around the later half of the original game, players explored minds that would fall under abnormal psychology. Edgar's Black Velvetopia was a journey into obsessive-compulsive disorder. The Theater was a shifting puzzle and an ingenious metaphor for a person dealing with bipolar disorder. And Fred Napoleon had to overcome an inferiority complex. So it's funny because it's like the opposite of Little Man Syndrome or something. Layers, man. Then there was the crown jewel of 3D platformer level design, which more people remember than the game itself, the Milkman Conspiracy Theory. A journey into the mind of someone suffering from a paranoid psychosis, and a masterclass in immersive storytelling.
I am the milkman. My milk is delicious.
As many analysis videos on this level as there are out there, too few cite the research into understanding paranoia and schizophrenia as one of the biggest reasons why this level is so mesmerizing.
Tough luck, come on, figure it out, it's fun. And so sometimes the whole concept for the level would come from that, and then we'd take that back and the level designers would go like, what can you do with a world that's twisted around on itself? What can you do with a world that's on a cube? You're like, what color is the sky in your world? And I just kept thinking about that phrase. Yeah, if you could go into someone's world, like what color is the sky in their world?
Anyway, obviously mental health is a pretty big topic in the media right now.
Look, we've all been there, right? Letting our fear and anger get the best of us.
But I can't help but feel as though this outlet, as in going into someone's mind that is, handles the subject better than most.
Thought.
Well, I seem to remember the inside of your mind wasn't so neat and tidy either.
After being hailed as a cult classic, it's easy to see why many had such high hopes for this latest adventure. Schafer even brought in Dr. Rafael Bocamazzo, a clinical psychologist and director of TakeThis.org, a group that focuses on appropriate mental health representation in games. It's from this launching pad that we'll dive into one of the longest spanning themes in Psychonauts 2, addiction. Before Agent Forsythe's gambling addiction takes off, we actually get a pretty good taste of this theme about an hour into the game. After hilarious chaos ensues in Dr. Lobato's mind, the player gets a chance to free roam around much of the Mother Lobe, which acts as the hub world. It's here that the game wants you to continue the story and go to class, but that's not what most gamers do. Most of the psychological concepts in this game are taught to you subliminally or are performed before they are shown or said. So, while the game knows the next chapter will focus on addiction, the clever trick it has up its sleeve is knowing that you'll be addicted to finding arrowheads, side cards, challenge markers, and such for at least a good hour or so before you continue the story. If this sounds like I'm reading too far into this, pay attention to the way characters respond to you if you talk to them, especially the adults.
Oh, good. You're finally here. Let me know when you're prepared to learn something.
They frequently comment on where you should be, and they seem concerned. Then there's the nature of those temptations to explore that are buzzing from the moment the hub opens up. The similarities in design shouldn't be regarded as mere coincidence. If this is meant to be an early symbol for the casino to come, then Auto is a slot machine.
But it's certainly a lot more exciting to see those spinning reels.
I always try and have eyes in games if I can. Eyes are very arresting, and if you can get some connection with people as they walk past, you can get them to gravitate to your game and try it out and see if they like it.
And isn't it convenient that he kind of looks like one, A, and B, is placed in the most alluring locations?
Do casinos really put the best paying machines near the entrance?
Okay, anyone who's played a video game before would dismiss any of these examples as gameplay mechanics that feature across most games, not for the theme of symbolizing addiction, and that's fine, dismiss away.
I disagree. I disagree, Gary.
And okay, even if visual metaphors are a stretch here, the 2 to 3 hours that went by that may or may not have been the time that you should have been working on my homework are not.
Our GMA cover story now, a parenting alert about your child's brain on Fortnite. The game's creators said...
Can the game/games themselves reveal an addiction? Absolutely.
Basically, a person is considered addicted to gaming if it's having a significant impact on how they live their lives. Like if they're not sleeping, not going to school, and not socializing in the real world.
So, before we throw open the door to Agent Forsythe's head, let's define addiction. According to the American Psychiatric Association, addiction is a disease. Okay, wait, let's pause here just for a moment. A disease? Like Ebola? Not quite, but if I asked you to picture a gambling addict and you pictured someone lifelessly sitting at a cards table denying that their money is going down the drain, then that behavior of them saying, "Hit me," could be compared to symptoms like a cold or a migraine. Where this gets tricky is when I mention the mindset of denial, something many addiction psychologists would see as a symptom of an addiction as well. It's important for many doctors to frame the definition this way, actually. It helps people understand the full picture of what addiction is and can look like. And most importantly, it describes how neurologically it affects the brain. More on that in a bit. The very concept of gambling has had a long and complicated history. I mean, hey, even most Romans had a gambling problem. What? It's not that off topic for me. I teach history as well. And there's interesting history behind how scientists and early psychologists back in the 1900s viewed addiction. For this generation, these people were morally flawed or lacking willpower.
I'm in. There we go. All right. Oh, that's fast. Give me another 2080.
Meaning that, at least in this regard, we've come a long way into how we understand the mind of addiction and how it really works and how to treat people. So if we're looking to diagnose, hypothetically, obviously, because this is a fictional character, and fictional characters cannot accurately be diagnosed no matter how good their performance is. And you know what, not a bad time to mention that people shouldn't diagnose themselves from a YouTube video either. That being said, could we diagnose Agent Forsythe with a gambling addiction? I'm going to comfortably say yes, and here's why. A diagnosis of gambling disorders requires at least 4 of the 9 criteria during the past year. And she easily checks off 6 of these boxes during the short amount of time that we spend with her.
Mesdames et messieurs, faites vos jours. Ladies and gentlemen, place your bets.
However, as you hopefully know by now, it didn't always start this way. So, the way in which Hollis develops her addiction is quite an interesting allegory to the real origin stories of many that deal with gambling addictions. Wait, Hollis, alcoholic? I mean... yeah, his mind is the topic for part 2 though.
Stop it! Right now! I don't want to hear any of those names ever again, you hear me?
Anyways, seconds in, and we're flooded with symbolism for connecting neurons in the brain. Hollis's head opening up, revealing a glowing floor of spiraling connections like the synapses in the brain being my personal favorite, but the connection bubbles being in chalk because it's meant to be a classroom is also a pretty nice touch. Next, we follow the connections in Hollis's mind to go a bit deeper into her psyche, where it's revealed that her mind has been altered based on changing two mental connections from cilantro and delight to cilantro and disgust. Aside from unique level design and mechanics, what's happening here is Psychonauts is explaining the way that when an addiction is formed, it can alter the brain's structure.
It's a huge difference from
Indeed.
there to there.
Exactly.
So that's in a matter of seconds as well, would it be?
Exactly.
Or?
Absolutely, yes. This is the anterior cingulate cortex. This is the insular. And these are the two areas of the brain which make sense of emotions. They may generate the emotion he's feeling of excitement. Will I win? Won't I win?
And it can change the way that the brain processes information. The famous Hollis. Okay, there's got to be a connection with these names. I could get into the anatomy of how this works and explain the link between dopamine, neurons, and synapses, the limbic system, the prefrontal cortex, and how that greatly affects the way that the frontal lobe regulates impulse control and manipulates critical thinking, but I don't think I have to. If we see the hospital as the impulse control center of the brain, then, even a child can understand that this is where Hollis goes in her mind to help her ward off uncompromising urges. The place is called
Our Lady of Restraint Neurological Hospital.
For a reason. Despite making poor decisions, Hollis will rationalize these problems into thinking things aren't so bad. It's here we learn about why it's so important for Hollis to control herself during stressful situations. And I really like this section in hindsight because while we might be prone to thinking of addiction as a product of someone's personality, it's helpful to keep in mind that things like stress and different triggers are most often what sparks the destructive behavior. Again, more on this when we get to Donato. His mind is it's destructive, it's like destroyed.
Need to focus.
At the core of Hollis's restraint, we see the mental connection that holds it all in place, her association with risk to death. It's why she's so cautious about bringing the kids along on a mission, but we'll soon learn that it's also what's keeping her from giving in to many other hidden impulses. You could make an argument too that the last bit of foreshadowing we get before Raz creates a gambling addiction in her mind is not only how she thinks about money, but also her excessive work or workaholic behavior, which is one of the newest additions to the DSM-5, a growing area of concern. After retangling quite the knot, Foresight is suddenly feeling
lucky.
So it's off to the casino we go, and it looks like a giant octopus. I saw the design of the casino and immediately thought of a symbolical, tentacles representing the many ways in which addiction can grab a hold of someone and potentially strangle them. But jumping inside her mind and the casino within, it's incredible just how well captured the feeling of excitement and fun is. Even the way Raz enters certain sections echoes arriving in Vegas, going from the quiet desert to the dazzling light show and spectacle. It's a place that invites exploration and variety, just as Vegas does. And of course, there's the sound of rewards and opportunity just around every corner.
The casino curves for a reason. It curves because they don't want you to walk into the hotel and have seen everything. They want you to go in, to explore. Because the longer you spend in a casino, the higher the chance it is that they can make money off of you.
It's not the player's role to dwell in these imaginations, though, but to go deeper and try to quell this destructive behavior by fixing her neurological connections.
Swallowing your feelings sounds bad, but really, who wants to hear about those ugly things anyway?
It's as though, we're playing the role of the therapist, trying to rebuild her loss of restraint and to restore her former thought process. This is the cognitive therapy approach in a nutshell.
Practice technique right now, and this technique is called laddering. And what this is going to help us with is getting some of those negative automatic thoughts. I mean, you said many right now, actually, just in your description. And it helps us to get them organized in a way so that you can actually see what that automatic thought leads to. Sort of like if you think about...
Meanwhile, Hollis does everything in her power to resist the player's help, most notably when she says she needs $3 gazillion from him. Such a goofy number, but hey, for a gambling addict who, even when they win incredible amounts of money, it's never enough to stop. Hence her prize feels unobtainable.
Come on, KG, this is no different than that.
The first section I traveled to was the cardio racing part of the casino. This part has a lot to say about how gambling can affect someone's physical health.
Hey, are you sure you should be racing?
My doctor told me I have to stay off this leg.
It reminds me of the famous rat pleasure button studies, which should stand as a warning for how dopamine can be so powerful that if given the choice,
to the point where they forgot to eat and would die.
So it's the player to the rescue, and we notice here that she's shocking her heart, which is very similar to the same shocks that eventually killed the rats. Next, it's off to the maternity ward for some lighthearted suggestions that gambling addictions can often harm relationships, especially when the addict is caught in a loop, like the roulette-style board.
I'll stay.
From a cognitive perspective, the player needs to break the thought patterns that cycle her back to gambling.
But I mean, I'm just one person. What could I do about it?
We can unrig this game, but you gotta believe it's possible first.
Then there's a section on quitting, which is pretty on the nose.
Oops. Now I'm just reinforcing their old bad thought patterns. Actually, I think it's important to know when to quit.
However, subtly, the game makes the connection between gambling and drug addiction here, with the minigame being the pinball pill thing. And finally, we get a flashy and hilarious boss fight.
If you die inside mine, you pee your pants.
And it's off to explaining where it all went wrong in the final act.
I didn't think you did. What?
What Hollis's mind teaches is that mental processes can greatly affect how we make decisions, but also how chaotic and often exciting an addiction can look. The early stages are fun, frantic, and can be optimistic. Yet, as we'll see in Bob Zanotto's mind, when left to grow, these addictions can destroy parts of the brain like a person's personality, their memory, and their overall health.
You're not at camp anymore, Raz.
Many of the mechanisms in our brain that create and can suffer from gambling addiction are similar to drug and alcohol addiction as well. So in the next video, it's off to the mind of a suffering alcoholic, where we'll see similar trends for symbolizing what a person battling a prolonged addiction goes through. Until then,
Let's just move the mission log to the classified file, okay?